Hi everybody and welcome to another Heel Heat Top 10 review. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Farouk. You didn't have damn on file?
Damn!
Don't have to start this over.
What?
You didn't give him the damn.
I just give him the damn.
Jesus, man.
Gary Rhodes, everybody. God. What a douche.
This week's top 10 is going to be the top 10 wrestlers gone too soon. Basically, before we go into it, the description is pretty much what it says. Guys that died before they reached their full potential.
Or that hit the top at one point and were going right back up to it and just never made it. You know? Because some of the guys on our list have had the titles, but...
And to start it off...
Number 10, a guy that I think was very well underused. Test. He passed away at a young age. One of the best powerhouses that we had in the business. He could actually wrestle for a big man. I was always impressed with Test. Even when he came out with the long hair trying to be, I guess, was it a Bon Jovi or whoever
it was? A Motley Crue bodyguard because Motley Crue did a concert
yeah.
on Raw.
And then from that, I mean, the guy had a hell of a career. Just, I don't know what it was. He just didn't get to the top.
And then coming off of that, our number 9 guy is a guy that did make it to the top. However, he died at, what, I think it was 30 or 32?
34.
34. Yokozuna, one of the best big men in the whole history of the wrestling industry. A guy that weighed upwards of 500-600 pounds that can move around like he weighed 230.
And he was one of my favorite guys because, you know, they would always put The Undertaker against somebody that come in, and their rivalry was awesome because they actually gave him the title before he had a rivalry with The Undertaker. And he stood toe-to-toe with the Taker.
The casket match I had where Yoko was afraid of the casket was pretty... I thought it was one of the better casket matches ever.
And one thing I want to add to it, too, is for a guy character that never really spoke through his big push, during that casket match, he sold it well. He looked legitimately scared, and, you know, he was one of the better workers that we ever had. Now, speaking of great workers, a guy that we have at number 8 really missed out on a great career. David Von Erich. This man could have been the NWA champion at one of the highest points of the NWA. Beating Ric Flair would have been, you know, his brother ended up doing it in his tribute match, but it wasn't like it would have been for David. I think if it was David, it would have lasted longer than 20 days or whatever it was.
And anybody that remembers the old world-class territory, David was the best of the Von Erichs, at least in my opinion. I believe it's your opinion as well. Closely behind was Kevin Von Erich, and then Kerry was the third best. Kerry had the best look, but David by far had the best total package.
Kerry had the WWE belt.
Yeah. And then after that, our number 7 guy, this one's going to be pretty controversial for most people, the Crippler Chris Benoit. Say what you say about what happened, how he died. The guy was absolutely phenomenal in the ring, one of the best wrestlers over the last 20, 30 years. It's a shame what happened. We admit that openly. But the guy was about to win the ECW world title. I think if he would have been alive to win that championship, the ECW brand would have been on par with SmackDown and Raw instead of going down and becoming basically their developmental territory.
And that's the thing is, I mean, they gave a guy, no disrespect to Johnny Morrison or Johnny Nitro that night. He wasn't ready, no. And they should have, if they were going to substitute Benoit with somebody else that night, they should have done it with somebody else that had it. Best one they should have replaced him with would have been Angle. But that's just my opinion.
Or CM Punk, who was there at the time.
Well, Punk had to fight for the match. He fought the other guy. I mean, but you needed a guy that was established to fight Punk. And speaking of controversy, our guy in at number 6 died in a very controversial way in Puerto Rico, Bruiser Brody. One of the best crazy men in the business. I mean, would you agree?
He's a precursor to what eventually happened with ECW. One of the forefathers of the hardcore style of wrestling. Some people say he's the last of the real independent wrestlers. At the time when he was going from promotion to promotion, guys were already signing with either the AWA, NWA, or WWF.
And another thing is, this guy broke in with Stan Hansen. And you know, you could say all the shit you want to say about Stan Hansen. He can't do this, he can't do that. The man was a legitimate tough guy.
And so was Bruiser Brody.
Exactly.
And you could ask any promoter that ever had to deal with him, he was tough to deal with. And the shame of the matter is, if he would have lasted another 5-6 years, he would have been there for the beginning of ECW and probably been one of the major competitors there. And coming off of that, speaking of major competitors, a guy that was a major star at WrestleMania, but never really got to get pushed to the top of the card, Umaga. A guy, he was basically the second coming of Yokozuna in so many ways. I mean, another along the lines of, all the great Samoan heritage family that they have. Another one coming out. Umaga could fly around the ring like a cruiserweight, and I think he was 350.
If not,
and he was, you could put him in there with a guy like John Cena, and he looked like $1 million. You could put him in a guy with like Rey Mysterio, and he looked like $1 million.
And the thing is, I liked about Umaga was Vince wasn't afraid to push him. I mean, his first couple weeks in there, he beat Cena, he beat Shawn Michaels, he beat Triple H. He beat the top 3 baby faces in the company at one time.
Yep.
Vince had a big future for the guy. Just drugs and other things really kind of got in the way.
Yeah, it's a damn shame.
All right, number 4. Speaking of having problems in your past that came back to haunt you. Really, that was what happened with our number 4 competitor, Eddie Guerrero. He was clean and everything like that when he passed away. It's just all the years of abuse on his body
basically
blew his heart up.
And he had heart troubles, which he didn't know of. Ended up dying rather early in his life, and it's a damn shame because Eddie Guerrero is someone that probably would still be wrestling right now, and he's someone that's sorely missed on our TV screens.
Could you imagine the rivalry he would have? Right off the bat, I think his first competitor would have been ADR, Alberto Del Rio. He could have made Alberto Del Rio bigger than anything else if he had the opportunity to work with Alberto. I think one of the best WrestleMania moments, not like you said, this is going to have some controversy to it too, because I'm mentioning another guy we had on the list, Chris Benoit, but when they were both hugging after Benoit won the title at WrestleMania 20, that was one of the biggest highlights of that pay-per-view. 2 guys you never thought would make it. Guerrero beating Kurt Angle, which I didn't see coming. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see that coming. I figured that was going to be a decent match, but I figured Kurt would get over. And, that just shows you the kind of competitor and the kind of backbone they had behind Eddie.
Yeah.
So.
And the next guy we want to talk about is another world-class championship wrestling wrestler, Gino Hernandez. He was pushed in the early to mid-'80s as one of the top heels in the company, a guy that would constantly wrestle against the Von Erichs and guys like Chris Adams. He teamed with Chris Adams for a little while. The guy had everything you would want in a pro wrestler. He had size, he had a look, he could talk. The guy was destined to be a superstar. Unfortunately, like many of the guys on our list, drugs and drug-related problems came into his life.
I think if Gino was alive, Vince would have hired him on, and he'd have probably, because I think he died before the $1 Million Man came out, the character. Ted DiBiase has been around. Yeah. He would have been perfect for that part too. I love Ted DiBiase as the $1 Million Man, but that's just the kind of character he could have played. Could you imagine if they would have been at WWE together at the same time? That's one of the dream teams that wouldn't have mind seeing. He was an excellent worker, and he worked great against the Von Erichs.
Yeah, and with them too. He did team with them a few times.
All right, and our number 2 competitor died in a very terrible accident in front of a packed Coliseum. Owen Hart, one of the best. He is personally my favorite from the Hart family because he played heel and face better than anybody else, and better than Bret. I'm sorry to say that, and you hate me if you want to, but he moved faster than Bret. He could chain wrestle. Bret could chain wrestle, but it seemed like some people had to drag out of Bret, where Owen, it just came natural. Owen is just one of them guys that should be, if he was alive right now, he'd be multiple-time WWE champion. I see that in him. I don't know if you would see that, but...
Well, here's the thing. I'm really big on Owen Hart as well. I agree with you. I like Bret Hart. I do a lot. Personally, my personal preference is Owen Hart over Bret Hart. I like Owen a little bit better. And I think Owen Hart, unfortunately, at the time he died, was right... I think he would have been a great opponent. He already had a built-in rivalry with Austin. He already had a built-in rivalry with Triple H. You add him into the mix over the next, what he died in 99?
99.
Let's say he wrestles to 2004. You add him in the mix in the main event picture with Triple H, with Steve Austin, with Chris Jericho, who comes in about a year after he died.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you put all these guys in there with him, and he's putting on pay-per-view worthy, WrestleMania worthy main events.
He helped mentor Edge in the business too. Edge was really broken up when he passed. But could you imagine if he would have worked a program against your boy? I think it would have been an excellent program against Mick Foley, because it was, I honestly think he could have been one of Mick Foley's perfect opponents.
Yeah, and that's the thing with it. Owen Hart, his style could mesh so well with almost anybody that he's almost a perfect wrestler. If you think about it, he works well as a face, works good as a heel. He can work a fast pace. He can slow it down and work a methodical pace. The guy can do absolutely anything, and it's a shame he never got a chance to do everything.
See, the one thing I did like about Owen, when he get heat, he didn't get cheap heat.
No.
Brett got a lot of cheap heat because of the whole hate America, Canada thing. Owen, I mean, he used it when he was with Brett, but other than that, he just used it. I mean, he didn't use it at all. I mean, he would just gather heat. He was just like a wrestling
heat seeker.
No, Heenan. All Heenan had to do was just something just a little heelish, and people would just boo the hell out of him, and that's all Owen had to do.
Now, before we get to our number one guy, we want to talk about a few guys, not in any particular order, that just barely didn't make the list. Unfortunately, it's a top 10 list. We can't put more than 10 in there. But we want to talk about some guys that didn't make the list. The first guy I want to say is Eddie Gilbert, the originator of ECW. For much the same reasons we talked about Bruiser Brody, Eddie Gilbert gets a nod on here as well.
I'd say it would be Big Dick Dudley, since you mentioned ECW. He was one of the biggest parts of ECW at the beginning of it with the Dudleys and stuff like that. He came off as their enforcer,
He was just a huge guy, a physically imposing man.
He's like Bubba on steroids.
Then another guy, also speaking of ECW, John Cronus, one of the Eliminators, Perry Saturn's tag team partner, again passed away, like most of them, as drug-related issues, but a guy that doesn't get quite the respect that he should.
And I'll mention a former WCW star, Chris Kanyon. Chris Kanyon, he had a love for the business that a lot of people this day don't really understand. I seen a thing with Diamond Dallas Page talking about him, saying even after he was on television and would work shows, he would always go back to the WCW power plant and help guys that haven't made it yet. That shows a lot of love and a lot of skill for the business, and I think he's one of the people that really got to roll into the deal.
And plus, how big could have Kanyon got if they brought him back on TV and he was an openly gay wrestler?
Well, another thing is, too, that who better than Kanyon? When he was in WCW, that thing was getting over big.
Yeah.
And WWF didn't take advantage of that. And I think that's one of the things that really...
Well, I really think they missed out on the openly gay thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have nothing wrong. I have nothing against gays, but so far up until this point in wrestling history, gays have been portrayed as comedy gimmicks.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a wrestler that's a built wrestler, a well-established guy saying, hey, I'm gay, I'm here, there's no change to his gimmick. He stays Kanyon, he's just gay. I think it not only does it bring in some of the glad people and all that other stuff, but it also brings in new viewers to say, hey, here's a guy that's...
Don't say that too much, you know why? Because John Cena will probably be coming out saying he's gay just to help Linda in the election. I'm just joking. But yeah, I see your point. Because, like Billy and Chuck and all that stuff has always been like a comic relief thing.
And you have an openly gay guy that I think they could have used it. Not saying that's, we're going a little bit off subject and getting a little political, but I just think it's something that could have been really helpful to the gay community.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
And then the next guy is a guy that I know you're a huge fan of, Ravishing Rick Rude. Now, his career was over by the time he died, but he was a real good secondary enforcer, manager type role. This is more so the injury/death. It's if he wouldn't have got injured when he did or died when he did, he should have been bigger.
Oh yeah, the guy was involved with feuds with the top guys in WWE or WWF back then, guys that were top on WCW, and that's another thing.
And the first guy to show up on Raw and Nitro on the same night.
Yeah. Next, we got another guy that he was part of the Hart family, the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. And he was, one of the big main eventers before he went to WCW, and they kind of lost him in a shuffle, got hurt there. And then when he came back to work for Vince, it was just like they didn't really have a good spot for the guy. And the matches that he put on were, he put on some 5-star matches.
Yeah.
The match with him against Bret at SummerSlam and Wembley Stadium is, people say is one of the best matches of all time. It's hard to agree or hard to disagree.
Another guy that the Neesons are just barely missed list, Crash Holly, a guy that wrestled mostly in the tag team and hardcore division, but a guy that had immense talent and could have been pushed to something greater. I could have easily seen him as a European, Intercontinental, or U.S. champion.
And the thing is, he brought a lot of legitimacy to the hardcore title. Because a lot of guys had it beforehand and stuff like that, but it was just like a comical thing. He took it and went with it. I like that for that guy. Another guy that really was really great when he was former ECW star, former Triple Threat member, Chris Candido. Body Donnas, he made a shitty gimmick work.
Yeah.
I think so. And he was really good at what he did as far as putting matches together.
And that's the best of the rest that we have. Now going on to our number one guy. He's a guy that I'm a huge fan of. I know you're a good fan of him as well. Brian the Loose Cannon Pillman. What can we say about this guy? He was one of the guys that really ushered in the Attitude Era with his style. He was a guy that was about 5 years before his time. He was doing some Attitude stuff back in the early 90s in WCW, when WCW was nothing but cartoon.
The one thing I liked about him in WCW is he made Bobby Heenan trip up. And you don't make Bobby Heenan trip up. He made Bobby Heenan drop the F-bomb on national television on, TNT, which is cable, but basic cable. And Heenan had to walk away and then come back and compose himself. But the promos the guy cut, he cut a promo with a pencil. The guy was awesome. If he's another guy like Rude, if he wouldn't have had the injury,
It led to the drug issues that led to the death.
Exactly. And this guy he's had a sad life, but he made the most of it. He had 30-something throat surgeries when he was a kid. But he could carry a great match.
And the guy, I think he was an absolute genius. Again, like what we said with Bret Hart, or Owen Hart, I'm sorry. He had built-in feuds with guys like Goldust, guys like Steve Austin. He was feuding with Goldust when he died. Guys like Triple H, he would have been a great opponent against. Guys like The Rock, can you imagine the matches The Rock and Brian Pillman would have had together? Mm-hmm. Or Jericho and Brian Pillman?
I think Jericho and Brian Pillman would have been a dream match. You could put Jericho with anybody, and you make a great match. But I think him and Pillman, I think that would have been a WrestleMania main event.
Exactly. And basically, that's what we have for our top 10 of guys that are gone too soon. If you guys have anything you think we did wrong, do you think we put someone up too high, someone down too low? If there's someone you think we missed, let us know down where?
Down in the comment box. I think we're going to do the suck it thing for respect for the guys.
Wait. Anyway, let us know what you think. If you think we did it wrong, if we missed somebody, tell us what you feel. And basically, that's all I got for this week. My name's George Coles.
I'm Gary Rhodes.
And this has been a Heel Heat Top 10.